started here. So what's new? eSight 2018.1. We've introduced a number of things, kind of broken into several key categories, I suppose. The first being Envy. So Envy, we've kind of called this Envy Phase 3 because over the last several releases, we've kind of done a number of iterations of updates to Envy, really just kind of adding functionality to it, building it out to be more and more robust and accommodate more use cases, really. Dashboards are a very popular component of an EMS these days. A lot of different requirements for a dashboard, especially when you start to look at different markets and industries. So Phase 3, as we've done here in 2018.1, represents kind of the next big piece of work that we've done there. So basically, that breaks down into a number of things. The first two bullets are actual costs and actual CO2. So if any of you are Envy users, then you may know that we can display cost and CO2 inside of Envy, in addition to our just our energy usage. Within eSight itself, within the core product, we have a pretty comprehensive and capable rate schedules engine where we can calculate costs accurately, depending on the degree of complexity you want to go for. You can recreate your actual utility tariff within eSight using a rate schedule. So we have a lot of customers that use rate schedules pretty heavily to display costs within eSight. So there's a desire to basically pull through those costs into Envy, into that dashboard, rather than just using a simple unit rate, which is what we had in the product before now. So basically, you have the option now of using rate schedules if you are using those, or you could just do it the way that it used to work, where you could just enter a unit cost per kilowatt hour or whatever unit of measure it is. In a similar vein, CO2 emissions, we have kind of a full emissions table and reporting framework within eSight, where you could find different emission factors by different fuel types. That can vary by region within the world, so on and so forth. So that too, we previously only had the option of just entering a basic kind of just a simple factor, which you can do that now if you're not currently using the emission factors or you don't desire to. But now you have the option of also using the emission factors as calculated within eSight. So two new options there to pull through potentially more accurate costs and CO2 values into the Envy dashboard. Additionally, one of the highly requested features was Envy was basically designed to display up to 3 fuel types initially, and that was kind of set to electricity, gas, and water, and that was hard set. Then we moved to basically make it so that you could change what those fuel types are, and now we've increased it so that you could display up to 6 fuel types on a single Envy dashboard. So, we've got a demo of what that looks like in a little bit, but you'll see that that's pretty powerful. That a lot of organizations, they obviously have more than just electricity, gas, and water. They might have steam, or production values as well. So all of that can be accommodated within Envy now. You've got the ability to choose your own icons and whatnot. So it's pretty flexible. Following on the flexibility trend, we now enable you to choose additional custom periods. So Envy, we've got kind of 4 periods built in where you can look at a year view, a 24-hour view, a week, and 4 weeks. Now we've enabled you to basically choose additional periods that are perhaps more pertinent from a reporting standpoint in your environment. And then a couple minor things there, really cosmetic. If you are a user of image maps, then you'd recall that on the left side, we've got a list of locations which are numbered. Now you have the option of showing or hiding that numbering, as well as you can basically change the ordering of those items on image maps, and the locations view if you don't use image maps, basically enabling you to kind of sort that in a way that's more relevant to any kind of numbering convention that you already have. So again, basically trying to make Envy fit in better to your organization and the way that you present information. Knowing that an NV dashboard is often placed in a pretty prominent location, such as a lobby or some kind of prominently placed TV. So here's a screenshot of what that looks like now. This is the summary page, and here we're showing up the 6 different field types. So you can see that we've kind of redesigned the look and feel of it a little bit to accommodate more information. But you've got the 6 field types from left to right. We still show your current consumption versus your last, what the savings looks like, but basically just presenting more information on the page while still doing that in a way that's clean and visually appealing. So pretty excited about the look and feel of that. Definitely excited to get your feedback as you start using it. As again, we're always keen to kind of keep tweaking this. Next category of changes we made is something that we've called dynamic reports. So simply put, this enables you to put one or more analysis templates together onto a report, which we're calling a dynamic report. This too has been one of the most requested features for as long as I recall being here at eSight. We've got a great ability to basically create all these different analysis templates, and you can then go a step further and schedule those out to be distributed to people by email. We've often had people ask, can I put just 2 of them together on one? And we never really had a good solution for that. So with dynamic reports, we have a fantastic new framework where you're basically presented with a design canvas, and you can put any number of templates onto there, along with some other elements too, like just a text box. If you want to just put some information onto it, again, thinking in terms of this being a distributed report. You can do things like page breaks and also include notes that you've taken during analysis. So we've got some good examples of what that looks like. So a dynamic report, of course, can be viewed as a PDF and therefore distributed, but you can also view it on screen. And it's kind of presented in a slick sort of vertical linear type flow thing where you can scroll up and down through it continuously, to some extent blurring the line between a report and a dashboard. But it has a nice kind of view where you can interact with all the analyses individually, but also in this combined view. This is of course schedulable via the report scheduler. It's visible in Express. From this view, you can quickly kind of navigate to the configuration of the different elements. So we think that the workflow is pretty intuitive and pretty good. I mentioned notes. I'm going to kind of break this down a bit more, but we've done a lot of work under the hood on our note-taking framework within the software, and that's kind of shows up front and center within this dynamic reports functionality. So here's a shot of what the editor looks like. And effectively, there's 2 views. There's the dynamic report editor, and then there's a view, kind of like a live view. So basically what you have there is you've got your working canvas on the right area, and then you can drag elements from the report tray on the left onto that canvas. And currently, we just have an analysis template, a text box, and then a page break. So we've already got a lot of great feedback and ideas of things that we can do in addition. But this is we're excited to kind of provide this this capability just to put the multiple analyses together and have it look pretty sharp. So basically, just drag those from left to right, and then once you've done that, you configure each of those, and it's as simple as just picking which analysis template you want to use. So what that looks like then is this live view here, where you've got, again, the right side is basically your live content. You can scroll up and down. You see over there, there's a scroll bar there. So in this case, we've got 7 templates in this dynamic report. And it's kind of nice because you can basically click on these over here and they act as a bookmark, which means that you can just jump straight down to these different areas without having to scroll up and down, much like a bookmark in a PDF file or a Word document. And then, of course, you can export this to any of those common formats. So any analysis template is supported in the dynamic reports. And again, this too could be piped through into Express. So giving you a lot of options for presenting, you know, larger sets of information to users in different ways. Beyond dynamic reports and Envy, we've done a lot of kind of miscellaneous work. Probably the largest piece of that is to tagging. So we've had a number of customers really kind of go all in with tagging. So tagging, we've expanded this quite a bit. Tagging is a great way to manage a large system, you know, a system with a lot of sites, a lot of meters. So we've expanded tagging basically such that we've got system tags, which kind of work as they used to, and that, you know, those are tags that are automatically created by the system, by eSight, based on things like, is this a cumulative meter? So you'll get a cumulative tag. You know, fuel types, so you'll have an electricity tag if it's an electricity meter, so on and so forth. So we've kind of added some additional system tags. And we've also created something called auto tags. And auto tags, perhaps as the name implies, is basically the way that works is you can define different auto tag configurations. So you kind of pick a filter and you say, okay, for any meters or tree objects, really of any type for that matter, for any objects that match this criteria, then apply this tag, you know, tag or tags. So what you can do is basically manage the application of a large number of tags across your tree automatically based upon other fields and other criteria. So, and what it actually does, the way we've done that is we've leveraged our filters capability, which basically opens the door to a huge number of possibilities. Kind of really any combination you can conceive can be accommodated there such that tags can be applied automatically. And in the same way, just as easily as auto tags can be created, they can be removed in bulk. So that's a fully managed, very clean process. A great way of applying tags in bulk and kind of removing the human error element as well, which is perhaps the greatest risk when you're looking at implementing tags across a big tree. So with the introduction of auto tags, we've color coded our tags. So we've got the system tags, which I talked about. We have the auto tags. And then we have, I guess, what you might call the ordinary tags or the custom tags, which is basically the case where you just apply a tag, you know, object by object, you know, to an individual meter, to an individual site. So those show up nicely, color coded, so you can quickly tell kind of how those tags came about. In addition to auto tags, you now have the ability to import tags. So what that means is when you're importing your tree, now you can basically apply tags to your tree objects at the time of import, saving you a step. So whereas in the past it used to be a two-step process, now between the importing of tags onto objects and the auto tags, we've really made that something that's you know, can be done easily and in bulk. So tagging is leveraged pretty heavily by some of our newer functionality that we've introduced over the last couple of years. One of the newest analyses that we have is called high-level analysis. And if you've used that at all, then you know that high-level analysis is different than the others in that you don't actually pick individual meters. You basically just pick a path and you specify a number of tags. And that's basically determines how, you know, which meters get pulled into the analysis. And, you know, as the name implies, it's intended for higher level, you know, cross-site type of analysis. You know, kind of a portfolio level analysis, I suppose. So the tree map analysis is a new type of analysis built within high-level analysis. Provides you a different view, a tree map view, as opposed to line graphs. And so basically, you know, if you've seen that at all, then you know that basically the way that works is you've got kind of different squares, and the area of the square is bigger for areas of larger values. So in our case, consumption. So I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. But it's a great way of kind of looking at a large number of sites or tree or meters or whatever in a nice visual way. And in addition, we've expanded high-level analysis now to not only just show consumption, but also cost and CO2. So you can analyze your cost and your CO2 at a very high level as well. When you're viewing the tree map analysis, you can then subdivide those boxes based on field type, meter service, and a couple of other ones as well. And we also have the ability to show savings as the color of those boxes. That's actually a feature that's coming in the next release, but it's currently in beta, which I'll touch on that a little later. But basically, we're kind of laying the framework here, or the groundwork for some new work that we're doing in eSight 2019.1, all surrounding savings. So I'll touch on that at the very end of our time here today. Aggregated data, just a quick note, that's basically the data that we use for high-level analysis. Basically it's aggregated daily totals of your meter consumptions. And the way that we use that is that if you're looking at a large period of time, maybe a year's worth of data for a handful of meters, that can get to be a lot of different, a lot of records. If you imagine you've got 15-minute readings or even hourly readings, that's a lot of data to pull for a large period of time. So it's not uncommon in systems like ours to basically utilize some degree of aggregated data tables as well, where you don't pull that 15-minute reading, you pull daily totals or some other totals. So we do that as well with an eSight. It's a powerful way of kind of pulling up data quickly. And all that to say, we've done that for consumption for several versions now. Now we also do that with cost data, basically to support what I just touched on above, that now you can look at cost in your high-level analysis. Additionally, this is a minor point, that aggregated data used to only go back a couple of years, and that's basically because it was only used by Envy initially. Now we're kind of expanding use of aggregated data, so that's actually going to go all the way back to the year 2000, which should pretty well cover most of our, most cases for our customers. And then a minor point there with budgets. So budget types, if you recall, you can define different budget types within the software, and when you define a different budget type has a start month, effectively. So you say, okay, this budget type is always going to start in March. And the idea is that when you use that budget type to create a budget, then basically eSight automatically says, okay, here's your budget starting in March going through February to the next year. So kind of correctly aligns with whatever year it is that you're trying to budget for, financial year or otherwise. So budget types have always worked that way. Now we've kind of changed it such that you can continue to do it that way, but we also allow you to define a budget type with no defined start date. And basically, the way that works is when you define the budget itself, not the budget type, but the budget, you select a budget type, and if you choose a budget type without a defined start date, then basically you define the start date at the budget level. So it's a minor nuance, but the the use case implications are pretty wide. There's a lot of, we've kind of opened the door to a number of additional ways that you can leverage budgets now. Just a few minor points here. With analysis, we do some additional caching in the background. It's kind of an under the hood sort of detail where we basically cache the data that we pull through on analyses. We used to do that kind of in isolated ways in different areas of the system. Now we're basically doing that for all analysis templates, and that's done for a number of reasons, basically with the introduction of dynamic reports and whatnot. But what that means, I think, in terms of what that means in the real world, is that once an analysis template is loaded, you will find that it loads again if you go and load it the second time far quicker, because that data is cached. So that's going to make a big difference in things like FM dashboards, or just any time that you're, if you're a big user of analysis templates, you should see a gain there. The second point is minor, and I'm going to show this a bit when we do our demo, but note-taking has been expanded pretty substantially. So it used to be that on an energy analysis, you could record a note, and it was only on the energy analysis. Now we've expanded it where pretty much all analysis types, effectively any analysis type where it makes sense, you can now record notes against that data. And you can record a note against the meter, you can record it against the site above it, a group, really any level within the tree, the notes are ultimately associated to the tree. And what that does is it enables you to basically kind of record conversations on the data. That, you know, if I'm one user, I'm analyzing some trends, I see something that you know, I want to put a comment on, I could basically record a note, and then anybody else that views that same data for that same time range, you know, same meters or you know, any meters under a site that I might have recorded against, they're going to see those notes as well. So it's a great way of basically creating a dialogue across your user base when doing analyses. And as I mentioned earlier with dynamic reports, you can pull those notes into a dynamic report. So, you know, pretty powerful use case there where if you've got an individual doing an analysis, looking through the data, they want to record some notes, and then they basically want to take that analysis, maybe along with 2 or 3 other types, put that all together in a report, neatly bundled up, and then send that off to somebody else to view. So that's really what we're aiming to address with dynamic reports. Kind of in that same vein of taking analyses and bundling those up and shipping them off, we now allow you to basically rename the series on the various analyses. So this was possible in a couple of analysis types, notably trendline analysis. Now you could do it on all of them, that you could kind of, you know, even energy analysis, if you've got 10 meters in there, you can choose how that's actually labeled instead of just defaulting to the site name .meter name. That's still possible, of course, but now you have the option of naming those differently if you choose. With Express, we've, you know, as you know, we've redesigned Express a couple of versions back. We've been making tweaks to it along the way. One of the things we've done is we now allow notes to be added, edited, and deleted on Express analysis as well, which is pretty great. Now Express users aren't left out from that conversation. They could basically, you know, add to the comments that they see, or they could view notes that other people have recorded. So that's visible to Express users as well. A minor point, we've added a direct link to your dashboard. There's a button pretty prominently placed right when you log into Express, says go to your dashboard. I'll show you what that looks like. But any organization that's a big user of dashboards within Express, hopefully you love that. That was requested by several different customers. We've also made more improvements to the Express tree, improving how you can search through it. And when you select different things within the tree, you know, because it was kind of a new experience, you know, we had a lot of feedback on kind of how that works and some of the nuances and the scenarios of, you know, what happens if you select a whole site and you've got a lot of meters under there, right? You could add a lot of meters to your analysis. So we put some more warnings and guardrails in there to just kind of make that a little more intuitive, we hope. And, you know, in the same vein, we've got a remove all button for analysis. So just a few things to kind of make working in Express and the tree a little quicker. One note here, another feature that's currently in beta, which is going to be coming out in eSight 2019.1, is the introduction of managing performance contracts within eSight. There's a number of components of this, but you know, really to just kind of touch on this at a high level, you're basically going to be able to define different savings reporting options within the software, where you can kind of define, okay, in our world, here's how we qualify savings, qualify and quantify, I suppose. You know, is savings basically the difference between your actual consumption and the budget, maybe? Is it the difference between your current consumption and your baseline period? You know, there's a number of scenarios. Oftentimes, it's all of those things for your organization. It just depends on what you're looking at. So we are introducing a framework basically for defining what that looks like in your system, and basically making it so that it's nice and easy for the end user, that somebody running an analysis, be it a high-level analysis or otherwise, they just simply choose a reporting option, you know, something called savings versus baseline or whatever you call it, and eSight kind of does all the heavy work to present that information to you. So performance contracts are a component of that. Any of our customers that do performance contracting for your end customers, this is going to be something that is hopefully very welcome to you. But we basically designed it such that you can manage a performance contract within the system. It has a certain term to it. Basically, you could define when construction started, when savings are expected to start, and kind of manage that against, and basically manage that against the actual savings that you're reporting on. So currently in beta right now, which means that a vast majority of our customers won't see it. It's coming out full force in eSight 2019.1, so I think just something to look forward to. But again, I'll touch on that towards the end when we look at the roadmap. Okay, so that being said, let me do just a rather informal demo of some of the new features that we have. And I'm just going to touch on these, kind of following the same format that we just went through. So firstly, with Express, I mentioned that we've got a link to your dashboard, right? So now we've got a nice button, go to your dashboard, and it basically takes you to whatever this user's default dashboard is, whether that's a private dashboard or a shared dashboard. It'll take you straight to that without the need of basically first loading up the list of dashboards. So in this case, it looks like I haven't even defined a dashboard, but just wanted to show you what that workflow looks like. And of course, you can go back, click the back arrow, and then you still have your list of dashboards here. So it's just a nice shortcut to get your dashboard without having to first go here and then select one, perhaps out of several. I also mentioned too that we made some improvements to the tree. One of which I hope is welcome to a lot of users is that we've added in an icon to indicate kind of what type of meter these are. Before we basically only had these dots, to indicate that it was a meter. And then if we were looking at a site or basically anything that had child objects underneath it, could be a group or a company or what have you, we'd use the folder icon. But you'd basically kind of drill down and until you got to the meters themselves. Now we use icons to indicate the different types of fuel type. We pretty much cover off on all of the main ones, electricity, gas. We've got ones that you could define for production and stock and whatnot. And then basically for everything else, we still have the circle so that you can tell that that's a meter point. So minor little nuance. Hopefully we have some positive feedback on that. Okay. I think as far as Express, that's pretty much all I wanted to point out. If we go over to Advanced, so starting with Envy, you'd seen the screenshots earlier of what some of these changes look like. I'm going to basically show you the configuration of it so you can see that aspect of it. So if we just pull up this one first as a reference, on this one, this is our industrial company demo. It's got multiple locations here, as you can see, and then basically for each one of these, you can drill into the data. So the first change is we've got multiple fuel types here beyond 3. So in this case, we chose to define 4. You can do up to 6. You could just do 1 if you wanted to. You don't have to do 3 or a minimum of 3. So you can do any number. In this case, we've got 4, and the 4th one being a production value. So you can easily toggle back and forth between these different fuel types as you could before, and now you've got an added one for production. These icons are also, to some extent, customizable. We've got a list of icons in there that you can choose from. And we basically are taking the approach that, pretty good selection of icons. Hopefully those are good enough for what you need. If not, let us know. We're always happy to build in new icons or to take in that feedback. But that's kind of one change there. So basically we've got 4 fuel types here, such that if you go to one of these other pages, notably the summary is what I showed you before, but also on ranking, you could still toggle between the 4 of them. But then on the summary, we've got it designed where basically the 4 fuel types will kind of cover the full extent of that area. So yeah, there you have it. So these will kind of dynamically stretch and expand as needed. So there's the view of all four of them. And then you could still kind of look at the individual fuel types by clicking on them as you could with the previous version. So effectively what we've changed is the all fuel types view. This hasn't really changed. In addition, I mentioned that now you can manage different custom periods. So here's an example of that. So these are the four that are default, that we're kind of used to seeing. Additionally, you can click on that to expand some other periods that I've chosen to enable for this dashboard. So basically you can choose which of these other ones you actually want to enable on a per dashboard basis. So I chose an additional 4. So I'll show you what that looks like just briefly here. So the configuration of Envy, slowly kind of expanding as we add more functionality, but we're still maintaining a nice kind of wizard question-based setup. So we try to make Envy very simple to create, very quick and simple. Whereas a lot of dashboard products out there on the market require a lot of engineering and design that you have to pay them just to change things. So we're taking a completely different approach. On the location view here, here's the sorting option that you've got now. So you've got a few different ways of sorting those as those are presented. So that's new functionality. The data view has been changed quite a bit to basically enable you to choose if you're going to show cost data or CO2. We now ask you, do you want to just do a simple conversion, or do you want to use the cost contracts or the emission factor tables? So if you choose simple conversion, then basically down here, for each of your fuel types, you define what is that cost conversion, what is that CO2 conversion, and that's done per fuel type. Or you have the option of toggling over to use cost contracts. So basically it hides that, and it just assumes that for any meters you're going to pull into Envy, they have cost contracts or rate schedules associated to them. So that's the idea there. And again, this is defined per fuel type. So if you happen to use rate schedules for all of your electricity meters, but nothing else, then you can still do that. You could set that, the fuel type 1, your electricity ones, the cost contracts. All the other ones could be set to use the simple conversions. So the look and feel of this has changed a bit. So there, by default, when you create a dashboard, it's got 3 of them, but you could turn those off if you want, just by choosing custom or none. And in addition, we've got a number of ones that you could choose from, but if you choose custom, then you are basically presented with the option of, okay, what tags are we going to use to find these meters? What icon do you want to use? There's our list of icons that I was just speaking about a moment ago. And then a few other kind of little nuances we built in recently, like the ability to treat a particular fuel type as production. Because within Envy, if you're looking at a consumption, then we've got numerous views of savings, right? So if you're using less now than you were previously, that's typically called a savings. But if you're looking at a production, that's not necessarily a savings. So we have the option to treat a single fuel type as production. Just a minor little point, but it's can really make a big difference on a dashboard. As far as the custom periods, we simply ask the question now, would you like to use custom periods? So if you say yes, then we basically present a list of periods that you could choose, and you could choose to include those individually or not. So, I chose 4 additional ones for this dashboard. And then the comparison, this is a cool little detail that we've added, because basically you have the option for each one of these to use just the previous period, which would be, whatever the duration of this is, one before that. So for today, it would basically be yesterday. For yesterday, the previous period would be the day before yesterday. Or you have the option of basically using that same period from last year. So if I chose last year for today, it would basically be February 1st from 2017. So, and that's basically used for the presentation of savings. Knowing that savings is kind of calculated differently in different organizations. That's why we provided that. So again, more flexibility to Envy, hopefully addressing more use cases. Nothing new here. Not too long ago in a previous version, we introduced a corporate content page. That's what that is. You can modify the green tips as well, add in your own, choose to hide the ones that we've built. And then, everything else here stayed the same with the theme and the security option. So that's Envy. We've built that out quite a bit. If you've never seen Envy, hopefully that was a good demo for you. I know it's fairly quick, but if you want to see that in more detail, definitely reach out to your account manager. They'd be happy to demonstrate that because we're pretty proud of the new functionality. All right, so that's Envy. I think that's pretty much all that there's to say on that. Dynamic reports, I wanted to show you that next. So if you basically look under your reporting menu, there's a new option here called Dynamic Reports. This is included within the reporting module. So if you've got that, then you have access to Dynamic Reports. It's not a new thing that we're licensing separately. So you get that for free, so to speak. Basically within this, I'll just create one from scratch to kind of demonstrate that. Here you have your canvas as I was describing. You have to pick a path as to where you want to associate that with. And when you give it a name, that's the name of the dynamic report, but it's also the name, the title as shown on the dynamic report itself. So you might have something like a combined electricity report. That's now the title. You can include some additional description here if you like. That's just for reference, really. And then this is where you just drag these objects onto the right. That's pretty clear, pretty intuitive. And then you just edit those individual elements to say which template do you want to use. Do you want to show the name of the template, or do you want to basically call it something else, which would be the title that appears over that particular template. So if I just pick one of these for a demonstration, let's see, need to find a template. So, and then maybe I don't want to show the name of the template, which is right here, base load last year by month. Maybe I just want to call this, base load, or base load for area A. Something that's nice and intuitive to whoever it is that's looking at this. You can choose whether you want to show the graph or the grid, and then here the notes bit. So I'll show you what that looks like on the analysis, but you have the option of choosing to include the notes. In addition, when you create an analysis template, there's notes that you can store there, kind of right under the analysis template name. So you can choose to include those notes as well. So it's kind of two separate sets of notes. These are associated to the analysis template. These are associated to the tree, effectively, so that you can see it in any analysis. So simple as that. Just check those options. I'm going to get rid of this one just so I can quickly show you this. I've got a text area here, so you might say, the above report demonstrates, so on and so forth. Put a page break in there, and then maybe another text box. So just a really quick example. So once you've kind of set that up, you can click on the View button down here, which takes you over to the Dynamic Report Live view. So basically generates that analysis template right there. And again, referring to the caching, once I've generated that, that'll basically be cached, and I can pull that up quicker next time. But here you've got your interactive template that you normally have. There's the notes view. So this is a good example. This is a base load analysis. We previously didn't show notes on that. Now we do. So I've turned on the notes, and there they are here. And here's a couple of examples here. Compressor replacement in equipment room 2. Looks like a major pipe replacement. And those also show up down below here. And we kind of use kind of a slick looking timeline view of what that looks like. And you can actually, within this view, come in here and edit these comments, these notes even further. If you want to basically use this as another way of kind of conversing with it, you can add notes right here. So here's a view of what the note control looks like. Basically, pick your path. Do I want to store it against the admin office, or you still pick your type, which if you've been using eSight for a while, then you may recognize that this notes framework is basically what we used to call site histories. So you've got your different types there that you can define. These are all definable. You can change these values, add your own if you'd like. Put a description in and then specify exactly where that occurred. So note description, here's some text, and you'll see that basically once you do that, save that, then that pops in there as well. So there it is there. We also have the option too, we have some customers that you know, they love the note taking, but they don't want people to be able to edit them here. That is a system parameter that you can toggle so that you can kind of really treat dynamic reports as a view only type of thing. So you can prevent users from editing these notes if you so wish. But you know, you scroll down, there's the text box I created. There's the page break, which you don't see in this view, but if I export to a PDF, you'll see a page break there, and then the additional text. So just a quick and dirty example of what that looks like. If there were multiple templates, I could click on this. You know, if I scroll down, there's an example. You click on that, it takes you right to that template. So you can easily jump around through your dynamic report to view individual analyses. So click on the back arrow. Now I'm back in the edit view. But basically, this is now a dynamic report template, as we're calling it, and this can be, you know, scheduled out to a report or loaded up by the Express interface or whatever what have you. So you've got the familiar option there to just generate a report schedule. So that's dynamic reports. And I guess let me just jump over to Express really quick to show you kind of how that shows up. So it shows up under the reports. So it is a type of report we're treating it as. So now you've got basically, you know, this is what it used to look like before. Now you've got a toggle up here where you can choose just regular reports or dynamic reports. And if you basically click on dynamic reports, it'll show you any dynamic report templates that have been created. And there you have it. That's the one I just created. Okay, so yep, dynamic reports show up kind of all throughout the system. Tagging, I'll just show you what some of those changes look like briefly. So if you go to the tags list, you've got you know, a familiar listing of tags here, where you can basically, you know, you can add tags. You can add tags this way. You can also add tags when applying a tag to a meter or a site, for example. But if you add it here, you see a new attribute here, basically auto tag only. So can this tag only be applied via an auto tag is the idea. So if you set that to true, then basically that'll prevent a user from, you know, at the point of looking at the tree, applying a tag here. And here you see, you know, these are now color coded. So it basically prevents somebody from manually typing in a tag that you only want to be applied from auto tags. Again, a means of quality control. So that's an option. So auto tag rules, this is the new feature there. So basically, once you've defined your tags that you want to use, you would then go and create an auto tag rule. And basically, here's an example where I've got an auto tag that effectively applies the tag anytime the meter service is set to electricity. So the way this works is on the auto tag rule page, you give it a name and you say, what object type do I want this tag to be applied to, right? And we support any of the four. And then in order to define the criteria itself, the way this works is, like I mentioned earlier, we actually use filters in eSight. So there's a list of all public filters within the system right here. And then you just say, okay, I want this one to apply. I've added that. Maybe I also want that to apply. So these filters are effectively stacked on top of each other. So if this is true and that is true, then go ahead and apply these tags. Now, if you've spent any time with filters, you know that you can really, you can really kind of go wild in there in terms of defining how these filters actually work. So if I just edit one of these just to demonstrate that, let's just look at that one I was looking at, meter service for elect. You can include a number of criteria. In this case, we've only got one criteria. Basically, if the meter service equals to elect, then the filter is true. Then it finds those meters. But you can stack additional criteria on top of them, and you can basically choose, for the filter, whether it's an and or an or. So basically, whether all of these criteria need to be true, this and that, in order for the filter to apply. That's called a narrowing. Or you choose the or approach, which is if this criteria is true or another criteria is true, then apply, then the filter applies. So and or, those are standard logic operators. So basically, you could really be specific in terms of what this actually returns. So all of that is possible within a filter, an individual filter, and then the auto tag rule kind of extends that one step further, and that you can actually select multiple filters as well. So you can really be granular in terms of what meters are, meters or sites or otherwise are returned or found in order to apply this auto tag rule. So again, the purpose of auto tags and just tagging in general is to better organize your tree, to enable you to use things like the high-level analysis, which relies upon tagging. There are other areas within the software that also use tagging, like project tracking does when you're defining a policy. Envy uses tags, so it's kind of becoming a larger part of our system. The use of tags. So auto tags are basically there to hopefully help you kind of address that and maintain good quality on your how your tags are applied. Okay. Last but not least, I just wanted to end in a place that's probably familiar to a lot of people, which is energy analysis. Here you basically, I wanted to basically show the note taking again. So if I just pull up a meter, I want to demonstrate a couple of things. So firstly, when you bring up a meter, you have the option of adding those, using tags as well. So you can basically say add all of my electricity meters. That's that was existing functionality, but you can see right there, there's a good use for tags. You can stack tags as well, so you could enter any number of them to really get the exact meters you want. But if I just simply graph one, let's just run that for last week and show what that looks like. And and there's the I mentioned earlier you could rename the series. So system default is just there's another setting elsewhere where it's just basically what is that, which is typically site name.meter name. But you could change that to be, suppose path. So if you want the full path, then basically when eSight generates the analysis, you'll see that it shows the full path of that as the name of the series. So right there. But there's your note taking again. So you just simply click on notes. You'll see that show up under most analyses now, and you can add notes and record them just as I showed you a few minutes ago. So, yeah, lots of little changes, a few big changes with the introduction of dynamic reports and some changes to Envy, auto tags. But we consider it a fairly feature-rich release. We hope that you find a lot of this to be helpful to you. That's pretty much all I wanted to demo. So if I switch back to this, so when are we getting this release? Basically sometime within the next 7 days. We are very close. We're basically having meetings every few days to kind of decide on a go or no go. But basically at this point, we're just resolving a few final issues, making sure we've got a good solid release, and we're going to have that out very soon. So you'll get an email from marketing containing this information. There'll be a link to our knowledge base article which includes a full set of release notes as well. So everything I've just described and more is going to be broken down there in good detail, along with a full list of kind of under the hood changes, any known issues, bug fixes, so on and so forth. So look for that in the very near future. Just a quick note, literally going to spend 2 minutes on this to talk about what's coming next. So we're going to do a Service Pack 1 to 2018.1 very soon. Normally we wouldn't cover this, but there is some new functionality going into this. Most notably, the introduction of an Internet of Things framework within eSight. So, I'm sure everybody's heard the term IoT or Internet of Things because it's such a buzzword type of expression. Everybody does IoT to some extent. So basically, what that means is, from our standpoint, it's basically us being able to speak a common language that a lot of the other big players are using. And we've just kind of flashed up here a few of the examples. IFTTT, which stands for if this, then that, really big in the, perhaps maybe more on the residential and the maker community, but a lot of commercial players are moving into that space as well. Zapier is kind of the commercial business equivalent of that, basically enabling you to connect all sorts of disparate systems to each other. Things Network is a good example of just a very open cloud platform that all sorts of hardware can talk to. And then of course you've got Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, both of which have their own sort of role in this. But effectively what you're going to be able to do in eSight is kind of build your own import driver within eSight to receive data from other systems, so long as the other systems speak in one of these kind of modern common frameworks. So just a simple workflow of what this looks like. So you basically create a channel in eSight. It generates a URL. So you've got your eSight URL, and then it's going to be that URL / IoT1 or whatever it might be. The other system pushes data to that URL. eSight captures that, and there's kind of two formats that we're working with initially: JSON, or that's what the JSON is, and then XML. And then there's kind of a mapping process that occurs within eSight, kind of like the dynamic imports framework that we have in eSight, if you've ever used that for CSV files. And then data starts flowing. So it's kind of like a do-it-yourself approach to build an integration, much like we have with some of our existing partners. So here's a couple screenshots of what that looks like. This is in beta right now. It's not a part of 2018.1. These aren't final designs, but basically just wanted to show that, the idea is that you've got some eSight fields on the left-hand side there, and there's a mapping process that comes through so that, as data comes through from the source system, eSight kind of interprets that data that gets pushed to it, and then you've got just an on-screen mapping to establish, okay, I want to take that field, map that over to the eSight data import code. I've got another field, I want to make that the timestamp, so on and so forth. So it's kind of like you're building an integration, doing a bit of developer work, but there's no coding required. It's all done within the application. That's what we call our kind of mapping view. It's like a simple view. We're also going to offer an advanced workflow, which basically follows the same thing. But instead of doing a mapping like I've just shown, you can basically build a script. And this is more so putting on your developer hat here. I won't get into this at all because I'm not a developer myself. I won't do it justice. But effectively, we're going to leverage a common programming language there where somebody could come in, kind of build a function that does that straight within eSight without the need to do that through external development or costly development and so on and so forth. So really, the aim here is that for our partners or even customers that have somebody in-house that can do this type of work, they could build an integration from whatever system they've got into eSight, so long as it speaks either JSON or XML. And those are going to be the formats we support initially. So I know a lot of this is very technical. We're going to have some more information on this in the near future. But this is something that everybody is kind of going in this direction. We recognize that these are common formats, and this is going to be a big game changer within the industry. I think that more and more platforms are kind of speaking in these open formats, and it just becomes a lot easier to get systems talking to each other. So very exciting from our standpoint. We already have a lot of different integrations. This is just going to open the floodgates even further. With this work comes, we're kind of redesigning our data exchange framework under the hood. This is very early stages, but basically what we're going to be doing is kind of building a common framework for taking in data. And one of the biggest kind of benefits that are going to come out of this is a dashboard for viewing data. So we've had customers request this, that I've got data imports coming in through 3 or 4 different ways into eSight. It sure would be nice to be able to view that, kind of a centralized view. So this is kind of the foundation of that type of end goal. It's going to start out just with the Internet of Things framework, but then expand into all of our existing type of data integrations. So you'll be able to get at some cool statistics like how many messages have come through, how many aired out. We'll have some nice visuals in there as well, some stats and whatnot. So yeah, very much in the early stage, but this is going to be something that we introduce in part in 2018.1 Service Pack 1. So and there's kind of 3 stages to this that we're going to do, which is basically initially the ability to import data in this framework. The next step after that is the ability for eSight to push data to other systems, an export framework. And then lastly, messaging. So messaging, this kind of coincides with our roadmap, something we're looking at to do in about a year down the road. But basically, the ability for eSight to kind of pass a message to another system, not necessarily the exchange of data, but pass a message. And there's some frameworks out there like MQTT is a good example. But it's all about this Internet of Things world that that we're in right now. Where one system can kind of pass information to another. So exciting times, I think, from a technical integration standpoint. So anyways, that's SP1. That's going to be coming out within the next couple of months. So very shortly after 2018.1. For our hosted customers, are going to be able to have access to that even sooner. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, that's the end of the presentation. I hope you found that helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly. My name is Matt Dauner. I'm the product manager at eSightEnergy. And we're excited about what we're bringing in 2018.1. So thank you for your time. And I'll hand it back over to Andrew to wrap up.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you all for attending. If you'd like to review any of this, we have a 2018.1 preview sheet available, which covers all the new features you just saw. So please reach out to either Matt, myself, or sales@eSightEnergy.com. You can also visit our website at eSightEnergy.com to learn more about the release. We have a really nice article you guys can read up on. If you'd like a personal demonstration of eSight for yourself and members of your organization, please use the Request a Demo button on our website. And with that said, that concludes our What's New webinar. So have a great day. You'll be hearing from us soon.